All right, Mr. Murphy, I think we're ready to go, so you're all here. I would like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee. I have, okay, I just got something from Donna. Let me just hold on one second. Oh, so Donna McDonald says she can hear us, but I guess we can't see her for whatever reason. Anyway, so I have 6 o'clock as our reopening, and I'd like to have a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. Hey, thank you. Can all hear my phone? Donna's back in. Let me shut this off. Oh gosh. You can all hear my clock too when it sounds the hour. Anyway, welcome again to everyone. I believe, Mr. Pearson, it's your turn to read the mission of Coventry Public Schools.
I've got it open this time. Mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And just to let the public know, the committee met in executive session for about a half hour previous to this meeting, where we discussed matters, litigation matters, and we approved executive session minutes from 8/31/2020 and our homeschooling requests, and both votes were unanimous 5-0. Moving on to, is there a motion to seal the records of that executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Second the motion.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve approval of the minutes of the consent agenda.
We are approving the minutes of 8/31/2020.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Any questions about those minutes from the committee? Seeing none, all in, could we have a roll call vote, please? Could we have a roll call vote, Donna? I think you're on mute.
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Moving into the public agenda, just to let the public know, the following agenda items are open for public comment. If a motion or a vote is made, the motion will be on the floor. I bring it out to the public. The public can comment on that motion or on the discussion of the topic on the agenda. And then I will call for the vote after that. That being said, our next agenda item is the celebration of custodians. Mr. Levis, would you like to start that?
Sure. First, I hope someone will take responsibility to make sure Mr. Coward stays awake tonight, because he looks a little too comfortable there. So, and this is, I put on custodians, but this is really our custodians, our facilities, our maintenance staff. I don't know if everybody else can mute, if you don't mind. Thank you. Our staff has done an amazing job in terms of opening, our educators, support staff, clerks. I mean, everybody's done a phenomenal job. But I would be remiss, and I know we've talked about it. We have the school building committee is going to do tours of some schools this Saturday as part of our stage 2. I think you'll be impressed with these individuals haven't stopped working since day one. You know, Friday the 13th was a day that we'll all remember, but our custodians, you know, under the leadership of Mr. Martin, our facilities and maintenance, they've done an outstanding job. You know, we've talked about it, we'll talk about in our COVID budget about increasing, you know, we have, you know, staff has been reduced over the years, and they just, you know, I've mentioned this before, I've received calls and seeing individuals in the buildings. They want our teachers, our staff, our students, our families to be so proud when they came back into our buildings. Our buildings are old. You know, we haven't invested in the buildings in many, many years, but they take so much pride and passion and commitment to this community. And again, I cannot thank them enough. And I say this to people always, I've said to the committee, if you see any of them, please thank them. They work, like I said, they've worked tirelessly. Summer is a time for many people to take vacation, take breaks. Many of them just kept on persevering and supporting the work that needed to be done. And so I just want to take time tonight just to say I you know, I'm so proud to you know, be part of this community, and especially when it comes to our custodians and our facilities and maintenance. They've been on the front lines. You know, they've been there working, like I said, when things stopped for many of us. And I just want to thank them tonight and celebrate. I want an opportunity for the committee, and we're going to do something special for them in a you know, before Halloween. I'm not sure exactly. I'm working on a couple things, but they just deserve every bit of thanks. And again, this community, the challenges they face on a daily basis, but they've been phenomenal. I wanted to just to bring it forward publicly and to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. So I'm just going to go down the line. Mr. Pearson, did you have any comments or questions for Mr. Levis on this?
No, not at this time. No real questions. Agree. Our custodians do a tremendous job. And it's good to recognize that on occasion. I don't think we do it often enough, quite frankly. So thank you to them, and hope they continue to do great work for our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Kalunian?
I don't have anything to really to comment, but I'll just say this one thing, and I think I've said this many times. If a custodian is out of work, everybody knows it. If the custodian does not come to work, everyone knows it. Anybody else, you can kind of backfill, but a custodian, you know, they are the, and I quote, you know, they're the people behind the scenes that no one really sees. And, you know, and like James says, it's nice to acknowledge them and just let them know that we do appreciate everything that they do.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. Mr. Murray?
Yeah, no questions. Same thing. I think I mentioned a couple meetings ago when I took the tour of the middle school for the building effort with Joe Lucian and Jay Martin, specifically called out the custodians at the middle school. And, you know, I personally saw a lot of the stuff they were doing over the summer, and I think that was important. I don't think we really realize it. Those in the PTO, PTAs realize it, because a lot of those things happen after hours, and there's always a custodian there moving tables, helping set up events, cleaning up, you name it. So we tend to recognize the teachers and other support staff. I'm glad you did call out the custodians, because we need their support now more than ever. We know that they're working especially hard, and we know we have limitations. We've talked about this at length. So I do thank them. I do want them to know that their work is appreciated, and that keep up the hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio?
Madam Chair, my dad had epilepsy, and he worked in the shipyard on making ships during World War II. From there, he went to work at Brown and Sharp, and then he suffered a seizure. And from there, he became a janitor, and he was a custodian at AT Cross. And he loved the job. He loved the job and he loved the people there, and they treated him so nice, particularly when he retired. So I have the utmost respect for janitors, Madam Chair, because my dad was a great guy and taught me how to be a great person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. And my final thoughts on this is that I am so amazed at the work that our custodians do every day. Every time I visit any building, it's spotless. And I know that over the years since I've been on school committee, there's been a slow erosion of the number of positions that we have that actually are there to clean our schools. And they've just done a tremendous job. And I just want to thank each and every single one of them. And I want to thank Mr. Martin for being a great supervisor. I only hear good things about all of that particular group of SRP employees. And finally, just a little note. I know that oftentimes if most the daytime custodians in our elementary schools, especially even at the high school, most of our students know them all. They know all their names. And I can remember my daughter coming home from Western, Coventry school and saying who her favorite person was. And it wasn't the principal. It was the custodian at the time, who just had a smile for every student and obviously kept the buildings clean as well. So there's no doubt in my mind how important this particular position is to our schools. And I thank each and every one of them for the tremendous job that they do. And actually, a little bit later when we discussed the COVID budget, we got in our packets today the schedule that our custodians are going to have to keep up with as our students are starting to come back to our schools. And I was just like, my eyes were like bugging out of my head when I was reading it, because there's so much there that they are so valued and have so much work now that they have to disinfect and disinfect and disinfect. So again, my hat goes out to all of them and I thank them for their tremendous work. Okay. Were there anybody from the central team that wanted to say anything outside of Mr. Levis before I put it out to the public? Seeing none, Mr. Murphy, do we have any hands raised? I don't see any, but.
I don't see any.
Okay, so I guess we can move on. Again, thank you. I'm glad that we celebrated them. Moving on to number 7, which is the fall sports and co-curricular activities discussion and approval. Mr. Levis, did you want to start this?
No, I think it's important for the committee to speak on this. I mean, our position in terms of funding hasn't changed. We'll talk about our COVID budget next, but I think I'll defer to the school committee.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Pearson, I think you're first in the line today.
So this is just an open discussion about fall sports and co-curricular activities?
I believe so.
Oh,
I mean, I can start by saying that I was asked to put this on the agenda, and so I did. And I know, obviously, there's been a huge groundswell from our community to reinstate fall sports and some extracurricular activities. So, I mean, this basically is a discussion as to how the committee feels about changing our mind and taking this off as one of the things that we basically use to balance the budget. So, Mr. Pearson, if you could start.
yeah. Well, again, I don't have numbers in front of me, so it makes the conversation more how I feel, which I'm not quite comfortable with. I like to talk about facts. Well, based on the meeting we had with the town council last week, it does appear that there's, I mean, this is hard to say for sure because they haven't voted and haven't presented anything yet, but it does seem like there is an interest in providing funding to the school department in the next budget that will go before taxpayers. Based on that, and considering, I guess we have a new deadline tomorrow for Rhode Island Interscholastic League regarding fall sports, to make sure other communities have an opportunity to work around our schedule. If we have to make a commitment before then. What are, co-curricular activities is, to me, a related but separate discussion because of the looming deadline with sports being tomorrow. Co-curricular activities could reasonably wait until we know more information about whether taxpayers are going to support a budget. So if we were to restore the fall sports that are currently allowed by the state, which I believe excludes football, but I don't have the full list in front of me. So we're talking soccer, cross country, tell me what else, tennis, I guess. What kind of numbers are we talking about? What would we have to find within our budget to be able to fund that?
So as I said at the last meeting, the fall sports for the ones that are allowed to start in the initial fall season is about $42,000.
Thank you, Mrs. Mangiarelli. Okay, so Mrs. Kalunian.
I don't know if I'm done.
Oh, I'm sorry. You went mute there for a minute, so I thought you were done.
I was shuffling around for a pen and paper. Sorry, I didn't want to make noises on the microphone. $42,000. So we'd have to find that money while we wait for a decision from voters. I think it's an important decision, and we have to make a commitment to it tonight, clearly, or just fall back on our previous commitment. We either can make a commitment tonight to fund, or we can decide our previous decision stands. But I will say we have new information since our previous decision, so we may need to. Might make sense to reconsider our position if we can. Definitely doesn't solve all of our problems. We have, as we'll find in our next couple agenda items, we have some seemingly insurmountable financial challenges ahead, but maybe we don't. So that I don't know if that's an answer. I'll give the floor to the next person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Kalunian?
Well, I got a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls concerning this subject. And I started thinking about, God, what would happen if my kid was still in school and he wasn't able to do what, he really wanted to do or needed to do to get into college. How would I react? And I got to be honest, react the same way as these parents. I certainly agree with everything going on. I see that they need this. I mean, if it was, 500,000, I'd say, oh, that's a little tough, but $42,000, I think we can find it somewhere. I mean, I'm hoping we can find it somewhere because I really think that these kids, they need something to look forward to. They've had, 2020 hasn't been a good year. And that's how I feel. That's my feeling. I understand the budget, and I'm hoping that Sarah can tweak the, sharpen her pencil a little bit and see if she can find the money somewhere to help fund sports.
Can I just jump in, Ms. Shadow? I just think it has to be clear that it's not about sharpening the pencil. I know that gets brought up. We have no place else to go.
And I get that.
No, but I just want to be clear about that, that the committee is going to be making, whatever you choose to do, a decision. But I think we're also, and I hear what Mr. Pearson's saying about, we can hope that, there's a change of heart and different numbers will be put forward. But I think, and again, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I say this all the time, if it wasn't for athletics. Other people wouldn't be where they're at today if it wasn't for drama or music. But I think we may be addressing this now, but there's other things that we need to be thinking about that we'll be committing to moving forward. And again, I just want people to understand that. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Anderson can say so, but, we're making that, I appreciate how this even got put on the process in terms of students and voice, but we just need to know that we'll be making a commitment. I don't believe we can just do this and say, okay, we're not doing the others moving forward. I think that would be a legal battle.
Oh, I agree.
So I just want to commit, I know people tap dance around things. I think we just have to be clear about that. And, a thing like Sarah and I don't really have anything else to say about that because we've been saying the same. And we will do what we need to do. But there's going to be a long-term commitment. It isn't just the 42,000. Again, I'm not telling you what to do. That's your prerogative. And I've said this publicly. I'd be fighting if this was in my community of Attleboro. I wouldn't stand and tolerate the moment they said they were going to cut things. I'd be out there fighting with my neighbors and things like that. So
as I said, the same thing. I had to actually go back and see what I would do if my kids' programs got cut, because both of them, they had extracurricular activities that they used to get into college, both of them. So, I just don't think, I don't think I can I have to agree that we should be bringing this back. I didn't like the fact that we had to cut it first because it really bothered me. And then just to hear people, and like I said, I've been getting emails and phone calls, and it's it's brought me to tears. It really has, because I just feel for these kids. So that's how I feel. Like I said, I know the budget. I know where we're at. I'm hoping that, the taxpayers will help fund the schools this year. But that's how I feel. That's where I'm at.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Murray.
Thank you. So first off, let me be clear that we all said prior to COVID, we needed that 1.8 million. That was a pre-COVID budget. And I was one of the biggest supporters of holding the line on that because I knew we needed it. And we put forth that budget, and the council chose not to move that forward. That was on them. And that's what was discussed the other night, and we tried to express. It is on them because they chose not to bring it to the voters. So now we're in this situation. And part of that 1.8 million was sports activities and the other things that we wanted to keep in. And we all wanted to keep it in. And it sounds like the town council the other night wanted to keep it in. Well, they were pressing us to keep it in. And I was put on the spot, and I bluntly said that I couldn't commit to that because we had no commitment of rainy day funds and no commitment that they'd even put 1.8 million on the FDM for the voters once again, because we've had commitments before and they've gone back on that. My intent is not to pick a fight with council, but those are the facts of the situation. Here's the other fact. We're deficit spending now, right? Let's be honest. We're having to front money for COVID. We do not have cash flow. We're in a very tight situation. And so if we choose to move this forward, we're choosing to move forward without the revenue source identified. Now, all that said, a lot of this was pre-COVID. So while I was one of the biggest supporters of saying if sports have to be cut because the town didn't approve our budget pre-COVID, I was willing to do that. But here's the facts. They didn't get a chance to vote on it because the council didn't bring it forth to them. So the community didn't choose this, and I don't blame them. I pin this at the floor at council, and they can disagree with it, They can yell and scream at their meeting at me. They can do whatever they want. But the truth of the matter is, this lays at their feet, which is exactly what I said in June when they made that vote. So that said, it also is, that was a pre-COVID budget. COVID does change things a little bit for me, because I think we do have an obligation to support these students. And we have been stripped of a lot. My own kids have been stripped of a lot. They don't have these activities. They're sitting at home. They're doing work from bed. They don't have a chance to get out there. And one of the most inspiring things that I've seen in this community is over the past couple of weeks, when students stood up and went out and did their protest in the field, and they demanded that their voices be heard. And they're working the process. We talk about reinstalling civics lessons in our high school. What better civics lesson was there with the kids standing out there demanding that their politicians, their elected officials, come to the table with a solution? And unfortunately, we didn't have that solution last week. And I feel badly about that. But I do think this falls on our plate as a school committee. And one of the things that kept running in my mind, and I'll go Florio on everybody, is a little bit of touchy-feely. But when I was overseas and deployed, this is talking about stressful situations. That's in a war zone, that's one of the most stressful situations you can have in life. And those kids were stripped of everything, bombed out buildings. I used to go through dumps. The kids were living in shacks made of oil cans. But one of the things that was universal was sports. I gave away over 100 soccer balls because at the time I worked for the Boston Park system, and they donated. And I'd go through these fields where they had soccer fields set up with 155 artillery shells. And they would be sitting there, they'd be playing, just like a normal day, like a backyard or a schoolyard. And they'd be playing soccer. Sports are a universal release when things are stressful. Sports are something that we can all come around when our community is down. After 9/11, one of the first things that they wanted to bring back was sports. And it gives us a sense of community. It gives us a sense of meaning. And in this situation, it will help our students achieve their future goals. That said, I will say, I agree with Mr. Levis. As a school committee, we are gonna own this. We are deficit spending. And to Mr. Pearson's point, I understand his reservations. I have reservations. But who would have thought we would have been in this situation 8 months ago? Who would have thought we would have been on distance learning as of March? We had savings from that. Who knows if we're going to be back in distance learning in 3 months? Not to scare anybody, but we see the way PC's going. So we don't know at this point pretty much anything. We know that we're going to be voting on a budget tonight. We're going to hopefully be voting on a COVID budget. And even that isn't funded at this point. So the way I look at it is we're deficit spending already. And I'm not saying that's fiscally sound, but I do think that it is a balance that sometimes needs to be had with our responsibilities, both fiscally and our obligation to our students and our district. And our obligation to our students matters. And it's not just about dollars and cents. And believe me, anyone who knows me, I'm a dollars and cents person. But I also have to look these kids in the eye and say reasonably that I had no other option. And at this point, I'm not convinced there is no other option. We've looked to the town for the budget, and I expect the council to step up and put it on the docket, put it on the FTM. And I expect this community to vote for that. And if the community votes against it, then I will sit here in a few months and we will make whatever other cuts we have to make, and they're gonna hurt. We don't have a lot of places to cut. And Sarah's right on that. We've already made a ton of cuts. I guess what frustrates me the most is that people have said, we always cut sports. And we on the committee know that's not always true. We on the committee know that a lot of the first cuts are teachers, programs, staff, which we already did this year. We had 20 on the agenda earlier, and I think it was April when we made those cuts. The French program, ROTC, some others. ROTC actually wasn't on there, but that, that's another story. But some others that were on there. And, every year I will say we do make cuts, but a lot of it's the staff, not sports. Unfortunately, sports are one of those low-hanging fruit, which we all know. It's like the parks department on the town side. One of the few things that we can cut that is discretionary. So I'll sum it up in that I am in support of restoring. I don't know what the legalities, and John, you can weigh in on this, about restoring fall sports and activities and not necessarily restoring spring right now, because we don't know what our budget is. And we're still waiting on a lot of pending information. And I'd certainly feel more comfortable if we could vote on a short term. And Sarah, you can weigh in on this. I think it was 70 some odd thousand on activities too, because I also feel that if I'm gonna say sports is important, the activities, any activities we can do, which I know we can't do a lot, we should probably bring back in the short term, because it's disingenuous to me to say that sports is more important than, let's say, drama or another club. And that's the way I feel about it. But John, can you weigh in on that?
Sure. If the committee wishes to approve fall sports and not have spring or winter sports, that will be the prerogative of the school committee. From a legal perspective, there is no issue with that. From any other perspective, that is up to you as the elected officials. I do want to caution you, however, that you have an obligation as a school committee to operate with a balanced budget. And as the superintendent has indicated, there are no more places that Ms. Mangiarelli can sharpen up her pencil and make additional cuts that aren't going to be incredibly painful. And I do think that you should all be aware that even if the council puts some sort of proposal before the voters, at the moment, you are still running a deficit. And in the event that you run a deficit, there is a legal process to resolve it. And the legal process, though, will ultimately not be determined by the voters. It won't be determined by the school committee. It will be determined by a superior court judge. And a superior court judge, I think, would have no problem going through the expenditures right now and finding many, many, many places to cut. For example, you don't have to have all of the different classes you have at the high school. You don't have to have all of the electives. You don't have to have all of the sports. You don't have to have all of the after-school activities. You don't have to have late buses. You don't have to have deans. You don't have to have assistant principals and so forth. And if the school committee can't balance its budget, then somebody else will balance the budget for you, and you won't necessarily appreciate what the outcome of it is, because if it's decided in the Superior Court is not going to be interested in the quality of life of Coventry. They're not going to be interested in home values. The Superior Court will simply be interested in terms of whether this year's budget, not next year's budget, this year's budget balances. And I think that you're really painting, at this point, the superintendent and Mrs. Mangiarelli in a corner in terms of coming up with a budget that works, even if the council provides you with the money that they were talking about at the last meeting, which, if I understand Mrs. Mangiarelli correctly, is not sufficient to operate the programs that you currently want to operate.
And that's true, because we have, the only thing we can actually ask for at this point would be quote unquote rainy day funds, which is fund balance. And that can be approved by council, but the rest goes to the voters, and our sports and activities was encapsulated in our budget request. So that ultimately has to go through two steps. One is council has to approve that $1.8 million request, or at least enough to restore the programs and activities that were included in that as part of our cuts. And as I also stated, and you would agree, John, the school committee ultimately has discretion over the budget, which meaning if we have a huge hole due to COVID and we have absolutely no other choice, we may have to shift budget lines to cover that. So, I know there's a lot of people in the community think this is extremely simple. It's not. People think that we're just arbitrarily trying to cut this. We're not. But to your point, ultimately somebody else may decide our fate if we're not fiscally sound. That said, being pragmatic, and I'll just lay it out there, this is an open meeting. If we want this budget passed, I can't afford to lose parents on this. I'm already losing the will of the community. I mean, it looks bad. This just looks bad for our community. There is no other community going through this sports debate right now. It's actually embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me. And I'm not saying it's anyone here's fault. Honestly, I could point to others whose fault it is, because we've told them this was happening. But, you know, at this point, all I can do is try to be positive. I think if we set the tone that we're trying for the, Sarah, can you chime in on what the activities are and cost? I think it was around 70,000.
Right,
Bring
so,
everything.
so to add in the activities, and this was just a few, Mr. Levis, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only activities that we talked about was National Honor Society, National Junior Honor Society, class advisors at the high school. Did I miss one?
Student council.
And student council. So that would bring the total to 60,000. We have a whole other host of clubs other than those. We just picked those because they had a leadership. But you notice the drama is not on there. So there are quite a bit of other clubs that we did not address. That's another $330,000 if you look at the cut sheet.
Right.
So,
And right now, the
and that-
reason, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I was going to say the reason, because we're not going to have after school, like our buildings are going to close, our custodians need time. You know, right now, we don't plan on having those after school programs in
Yeah,
our.
reasonably, we're probably not going to be able to run many of those programs. Some of those programs I know at the elementary school are partially funded through PTOs, PTAs. And again, I don't even know if we can even run those. We're just getting back to school. We're going to be, you know, through October. I mean, I think right now, the bulk majority of our lift is getting kids back in the schools. You know, I don't know. What I do know is pragmatically, out of our budget, I know budgets, and we'll have money that's going to be slid all over the place in the next few months to try to cover different expenses and pulling line items and finding money. One thing I know about budgets is everything is very fluid. Maybe I'll pray for a great snow year. We won't get any snow, you know? I mean, that's always the one that comes up in municipal side, right? But I would say that at this point, if we can restore the fall sports and some of those limited activities that can run in the fall, I think we're doing our duty as a school committee to at least move the ball forward and try to get the community, meet them halfway. We've heard from them. I think as an elected official, I have a responsibility to respond to the many emails and comments I've gotten in my district and advocate on their behalf. And I don't know how the other members feel. We've heard a couple of comments. I'll leave it to the rest.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Luke, for your service to the country. I had a cousin who died in the towers on 9/11. And what you said hit home a lot. I also have a daughter-in-law who played unified sports, and she's now 54 years old, and she continues in the Special Olympics. And sports have always been very important to me because actually it helped me out of a very hard situation as a child. And I definitely approve of this. What bothers me is that people are saying, well, you know, when the school committee's in dire straits, the first thing they do is threaten to cut sports. Well, this hasn't happened. This doesn't happen every year when you have a pandemic and you have a budget and the council doesn't want to fund either one, and neither does the state, and neither does the federal government. So we have to go to the council for the 1.5 million in COVID and 1.8 million for our budget. And I know people are saying, oh no, you can't do that. And I'm saying, yes, we can. Kids need us now more than ever. I've spoken to parents. I've walked the streets. I've spoken to parents, and I've spoken to young adults who are telling me their friends are contemplating suicide because of COVID-19, and because there's no contact, and because there's no sports. And kids are supremely anxious because they're worried about their scholarships. They're worried about not competing. They're worried that they're not going to be accepted to college because they're not involved in sports. So you have my approval on this, Madam Chair. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if we're running a deficit. I believe that if we allow the fall sports programs to go through, that all these kids that are fighting for fall sports and their parents are going to vote in favor of the budget. And this is no knock on the teachers. I agree with them. Some teachers have 20 kids per classroom, and you know they're anxious and they're nervous about what they're doing, and it's a tough decision because they're saying, well, if we give fall sports back, then the community doesn't understand how tight things actually are. And they really don't, because the council's not participating in the process. Not all the council members are, I should say. Mrs. Dixon called me last night. I know she's been speaking to Mr. Murray on a regular basis. I know council people care, but some don't. And they just want to see us in a very tough situation. And when they berate our superintendent and say, if you don't like what we're saying, leave, that tells me they have no respect for us. And they have no respect for our superintendent. So, Madam Chair, this is a much deeper issue for me. It's a personal issue. And sometimes, like, I'm wearing a unified sports t-shirt this evening. And there's a reason for that. Because of my sister-in-law, Dora. And I really do want to approve fall sports, because I don't want to see any kids not get their scholarships, not go to college, worry about their SATs, not have an idea about their future, where before pre-COVID they did. And Madam Chair, I will approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. So my final comments are that I know that we're in a very precarious situation. I know we have budget concerns, but I also know that we are on very thin ice, and we're going to consider Sarah's letter tonight that she sent to the Auditor General saying that we are in deficit spending. To deficit spend to bring back fall sports and some selected extracurricular activities, I feel is justified. I'm willing to take the chance and throw the dice and hope that the town council will in fact put forward a new proposal for this community that will tax our citizens and give us the 1.8 million, and also let us receive some funds from the rainy day fund on the town side to finance the COVID concerns that we have. To not allow our kids to play sports this fall, I think would be a huge detriment to our students. And I think as a school committee, we have to be responsible. I can't even imagine a high school without class advisors or student council. How does that happen? We can't allow that to happen. So I went along with the cuts originally because, quite honestly, originally when we were talking about this, we weren't even sure any fall sports were coming back. There was a good chance that none of them would have been restored, never mind the handful that has been restored. We have no idea what COVID will bring to us in the winter. There's a good chance that spring sports will not run. And like has already been stated, the extracurricular activities, can't happen in many of our schools because the buildings are going to be closed and custodians need that time to clean the buildings. So I was supportive of putting this on the agenda when I was asked. I feel that our community, and it's really interesting, there have been lots of parents that have emailed us and me individually, but I also have received calls from some of our student leadership that have absolutely made me proud to be a member of this committee and to be part of the education system here in Coventry. It just shows you what a good education can do for kids. They can stand up and find their voice and be advocates for themselves. And that has so impressed me. I just feel that we can't let our kids down on this. And so I am definitely in favor of, a careful reinstatement of some of our extracurricular activities and fall sports. That being said, is there a motion that someone would like to make, and then we'll bring it out to the public for comment? You're muted,
You're
Ms.
muted.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the sports, fall sports, and co-curricular activities.
I second the motion.
Okay, before I call for the vote, I see that we have one hand up from the audience.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, I
Murphy?
just want to make sure that
Sorry.
motion has specific to fall sports and an amount tagged to it.
Yeah, I was going to say that we might have to revisit that. I'm not sure, Sarah, do we need to come up with an actual amount, or can we leave it that it's fall sports and some limited extracurricular activities to be decided on by the senior administration?
The committee,
So, sorry, I was just going to say, I think it would be helpful from a directive perspective to have an idea of what co-curriculars are actually going to be taking place. That would be my only comment. So I don't know if we need a dollar amount. There's only a limited number of fall sports running, unless, John, maybe they want to specify this fall season, because traditional fall sports are still slated to run. They're just running in a few months. So I'm not, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's two issues. One is that you do need to indicate whether this is for the fall season, whether it's for all seasons, whether it's for the fall season that they plan on running in the spring for football and girls volleyball. Yeah, you need to be clear with the administration with regard to that. The second thing, you also need to be clear with the administration in terms of what you mean by co-curricular activities. For example, Ms. Mangiarelli indicated that there are many, many clubs that are not included in the list that she has identified in coming up with the figure to get you to about $70,000. She gave as an example the drama club. You have foreign language clubs. You have all sorts of clubs. And the question,
National Honor Society.
Ms. Mangiarelli needs some, and the superintendent needs some guidance as to how much, frankly, how much money are you appropriating for this purpose?
Mr. Levis? Mr. Levis?
Mr. Levis, could you comment on what you think our top amount should be?
All I will say is that we had put forward the 5 sports that were running in the fall, boys and girls cross country, boys and girls soccer, and girls tennis. And then we had put forward Junior National Honor Society at the middle school, National Honor Society at the high school, the class advisors, and we put forward the student council. Those were we had presented a budget where, if we could, we would have liked to fund those, but then we cut all those. So,
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what, again, I can't speak for you, but that's what we had originally discussed when we were putting forward budgets, until we realized that there was no, the town had no desire, at least at that point, to put forward a budget. Or I shouldn't say they didn't have a desire, we just didn't have a date, and we had to come up with that level funded budget, that temporary budget that we put forward. So, I mean,
So could you tell us what the number is? Is it about 42,000 for the fall or not?
the total number for that,
So the fall sports is about 42,000 and the limited number of clubs that were listed is 18,000. I
Okay.
have the club list up. If you want me to read through the names quickly, just so you get an idea of all the clubs that are there, the dollar amounts on that cut sheet, but I don't want to be and I don't think Mr. Levis wants to be the one cherry picking which clubs get to run and which don't.
No.
So we have world language, marching band, ROTC drill, dance team, yearbook, and some of these are repetitive at other schools. Then we have the advisors. I'm just going through the list. Interact Club, National Honor Society, Entry Advisor, Envirothon, Skills USA, Student Council, Basketball Cheerleading, Drama Club, the Radio, Football Cheerleading, Jazz Band, Showcase, Select Chorus, Yearbook again, Student Council again, some of these are at the middle school, Robotics, Drama Club, Falcon Pride, Select Chorus, Her Turn, Garden Club, Cheerleading Club. And then at the elementary schools, again, we go Yearbook, Checker Club, Morning Movement, STEAM, Chorus. Trying to see if those are pretty much Mentor Club, Computer Club, Talent Show. So Feinstein Club, Livestock Club. So I think that's pretty much it. But so we have quite a few other clubs going on.
Mr. Murray,
Yeah, so listen, I know there's a lot of clubs. First thing we need to know is what is actually running, right? So obviously if there's stuff off the table that just can't feasibly run at this point, now that we've started the year, I think here would be my suggestion. We know sports are on the table. There's a critical deadline on this, right? So we know the number on that. I guess my question to the administration is, we don't have high schoolers in school. We don't have middle schoolers in school. We're ramping up elementary school. Is the extracurricular activity something that needs to be decided tonight? Because if not, we could come back with the 18,000 at the next meeting based on a recommendation from you and some additional information that would outline what is a go, no go. And then who knows, then we may be able to cherry pick list that brings us to 18,000, or maybe it brings us to 22 or whatever it is. So that way we have more information, because I don't feel comfortable making a decision on a myriad of activities that may be a go, no go. And that's just a question. And Donna wants to chime in.
Donna,
I'm just wondering, are there specific clubs that the state has said we can't have? Like I'm hearing, select chorus, music. I didn't think that they were allowed to be in the same room, blowing instruments and singing and so on. So.
but there's ways of being creative and having things.
Okay.
I think that,
No,
all we said before was that our buildings right now and for the foreseeable future, our buildings are going to close. Because, we're trying to limit activity. I mean, we don't have money. We're not going to be opening our buildings to other groups won't be coming in. We're not going to be letting youth basketball or men's basketball league coming in. We just, we need to sanitize. And so, on that thought right now, there's a lot that's not going to be happening. And that's, like I said, we had put forward because, these are things that impact people beyond. You can make an argument for everything. Like I said, and I don't want to be the one to cherry pick. We've stood our ground in terms of where our funds are at and where we're at now. So, I mean, if the committee chooses to do just the sports and come back and discuss, then so be it. Like I said,
I'm just asking if the state has a guidelines out there for clubs. If there are certain clubs, they said, no, we don't, like they did with sports.
So I don't think there's anything on clubs. There's different things in terms of how we
that's all I wanted.
How we instruct certain things in terms of in school, but
I think to Donna's point, though, obviously my guess is the approaches with clubs is approach it like you would school, right? You have to have social distancing, layered effects. So I guess what we need, and we don't run the day-to-day, is a suggestion from the administration, not now, forward, of what would be reasonably feasible given our current environment. Meaning, like, obviously, if a building's closed and it requires a building, we're not going to put the kids in there. But something like student council could be feasibly run online, right? There's certain clubs that could be run in an online environment, potentially at even a lower cost. So maybe not. I see Sarah shaking her head. So
There was some,
What I listed was the teacher's stipend. So, I mean, unless
Right, okay.
that's contractual, so you could potentially, but I don't want to throw that out there.
understood. I guess I'm just making the point of, I hate making decisions not based on data. What the data we have in front of us right now is we have to make a decision or not on sports. And correct me if I'm wrong, cheerleading was also approved to go forward. Was that not the case? Does anybody know that?
I'm not aware that cheerleading was in the fall. We
Oh,
were
okay.
told,
Maybe
I
maybe
mean, I was told 5 sports in those same 5. So it doesn't mean it's not going to go at a later date, but I was not aware. I mean, I'd
All
asked
right, maybe they
repeatedly.
just threw that into the mix now as far as what would be.
It could be.
approved.
I mean, I'm saying, but that was not communicated to me. And I know it is competition, so it's considered a sport, but
Right. So I guess, I don't want to over debate the issue on the activities, only because I think if we get some additional info on that, we can address that and maybe in the next meeting, because I don't know what actually can even feasibly get up and running. The what's right in front of us. And I'm not trying to, well, maybe we'll hear some on public comment. So maybe we should just open up to that. And maybe some people have input on that. So we'll leave it to that.
My only final thought on that is that we have a deadline of tomorrow for the sports. So that's obviously something we should decide tonight. The extracurricular, I thought we kind of had a general idea, a recommendation from administration, but that doesn't seem to be the case. To try to cherry pick those now, I think is a really kind of unfair question for all of us on the committee. And yeah, it'll give the opportunity for those parents to come after us as well. And so be it. We'll have to make a decision at some point. To say that our high school doesn't have class advisors seems like, how could we do that? So there seems to be a few activities that we will need to bring back, and maybe it is that 18,000. But to try to make that decision tonight, I think is premature. And so how about if we restate the motion to say,
Fall
amend the
sports,
motion to say fall sports. Do we have to say the amount of money, Mr. Anderson, or can we just say the fall sports that were discussed, or should we say 42,000?
you're muted, John.
I think that you should either specify the 42,000 or the amount that was originally budgeted, which is the same thing.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So can we have an amended motion on that?
Madam Chair, I amend the motion that fall sports, do you still want me to say co-curricular activities?
No, just say the
Okay.
false, we would,
Okay.
we
Fall
approve.
Fall sports in the amount of $42,000 be approved. And Madam Chair, this is not part of the motion, but that the people who are also affected by the co-curricular activities, that they get involved and petition the council to approve a budget of 1.5 million in rainy day expenses and 1.8 million for our operating budget. So the motion is for $42,500, I believe, for fall sports.
I second the motion.
Mr. Anderson, did we have to vote on the first motion, or are we fine just amending it?
You're a small body, so you're fine.
Oh, good, because I'm not the best parliamentarian on that. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Let's bring it out to the public. Mr. Murphy, could you bring our folks in that want to comment?
Sure. Okay, Jen, you're up first. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your mic.
Jennifer Marzalek, 7 Tamarack Trail. Thank you for putting this on the agenda, Madam Chair, and allowing us to move forward a little bit in the past week with this. I tell you, after last week, we didn't have much hope at all. And, you know, Friday came and I was sitting at work, and that was all that was going through my head was this is the deadline and Coventry is not going to be participating for the, you know, for the state this year. And what a shame that was, being a Coventry resident forever for myself. So when I got a phone call at work, and it was kind of, you know, had we thought of fundraising? Had we thought of doing different things to try to, you know, raise some money? And of course we had thought of that, but we really didn't think that, you know, we had time and these decisions were final. And that awful combined meeting last week where it just started off horribly with council yelling, and it was just very disconcerting to a lot of parents. So, you know, seeing the kids so frustrated, and then they organized their own sit out for last Friday morning, which was just wonderful, seeing all of our students finding their voice from last Tuesday evening at the rally to last Friday morning at the, you know, the annex building where they were. It's just wonderful to see them finding a voice. So how could we not just, you know, give this one last Hail Mary and, you know, try to do something? So some of us parents got together and we decided to start a GoFundMe, or people could make private donations if they wished. And, you know, it kind of took off from there. It literally went live Saturday afternoon at noontime. And as of 6 p.m., when you came on this meeting, between the GoFundMe and private donations, we are up to $22,870. It'll be minus just a little bit because GoFundMe does take a small fee, you know, give like $300 to $500 based on where this ends up. But I, like I said in my email to all of you last evening, I couldn't be more proud of this community. The parents, even the students that have donated, the businesses, some of our senators, even. It's just amazing what the community has done for these kids. And to think, if we had several more weeks, what we could have accomplished, honestly. I couldn't be more proud this evening to state that we will probably close this GoFundMe on Saturday, and we will be moving forward with presenting with a letter of restriction for all of the funds that are raised to go into an account to be used for Coventry High School sports.
Thank you so much, Jen.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
I did. I believe that, and I'm almost positive, I'm trying to text people and find out, but I'm almost 100% positive that sideline cheer is still an approved fall sport by the governor in Rhode Island Interscholastic. I think that their intention was they were going to cheer for soccer. I've reached out to Mrs. Roberts. She is the coach. She must not be on right now, but I'm really trying to find out right now. So, but I believe sideline cheer is one of the approved sports. So we would have to definitely include them as well, because we can't exclude them. And I know we've kind of tabled the tentative co-curricular activities that you stated, but I agree with all of you that all those activities are very, very, very important to these students as well. I mean, they look great on college applications, and what would we be without our student council, our class advisors, our honor society? And then we don't know in the grand scheme of things what's going to become of this year for winter sports and spring sports and allowed after school activities. So it's kind of difficult to state now what more we would need, but the deadline tomorrow, we know what we need for tomorrow. Our community's spoken, they've banded together, and this is what Coventry is all about. So we're very, very proud to all be from Coventry right now. After this, I mean, it's been 6 days 5-6 days, and this is what we've done together as a community.
I commend the work that's been done. It's amazing work, and you're right. It makes us feel proud to be part of this community. Mr. Florio, did you have something to say?
Jen,
Yes.
are you willing, can you help us pass the budget if the council? I'd appreciate it.
Well, we can always try, right? We can always get the community involved. I will support, I will stand there with my sign at the budget polls like I've done in the past. I don't have a problem with that. I am getting a text from the coach that sideline chair is definitely a go for the fall.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Murray wanted to make a comment as well.
I did see Sarah's hand up as well earlier, so she may want to speak to this. But Sarah, did you want to speak before I did?
No, I'm just speaking with Mr. Jones now. So, and I did put it in the chat, but he had said that sideline cheer was approved, which would be for football. So with
Oh.
football not running right now, it may not happen. But I do want to caution, cheerleading is not a, we don't have that listed in the sports. It's actually listed as a club. So that is kind of referring to one of those clubs that would need to come back if that was the case. But it doesn't sound like that would happen in this immediate season right now.
Okay, thanks. Jen, I just want to say thank you. Jen has been a huge advocate for this, for the community, on rallying support, getting the kids to really advocate for themselves. And, you know, I know that she's had this fundraiser going. I did reach out and make a donation to it. I think it's extremely important that they met us at least some of the way. And I keep asking for the community to meet us halfway. It's easy to be a Facebook warrior and slam us and say the school committee is not doing our job. It's another thing to stand up as a community to pitch in and find a path forward and advocate for yourself. And I think that's exactly what Jen did here. She could have taken a pessimistic approach and just, you know, sounded off on the issue. She chose to channel her energy and the energies, quite frankly, of many of her community members into something positive, and I commend her for that. So Jen, thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it, and thanks for meeting us halfway on this.
Can I just say one more thing, Luke? I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's, you know, thank you for your kind words. But it wasn't just me. This took a village, and there's too many people to thank, but this took a village. I just hit send on the fundraiser account, but it took a village. It took everybody. So I'm just so happy they all took a part in this. Thank you.
Thank you to you and everyone who contributed. You know who you are. So.
Thank you, Jen. Mr. Murphy, is there someone else that would like to make a comment?
Yes. Jim, you're up next. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Hi, everyone. This is Jim McCallum, 251 Reed Ave. Just wanted to say, Jen, thank you again for putting this together and everybody that was involved. I think it's an amazing feat that the community has come together and banded together for. But the one thing that kind of bothers me, and Luke, I want to say thank you for bringing this up during the conversation, was you had made the point that we're one of 39 cities and towns in this state, and we're the only one that's having this issue. And I think we all have to strongly look at ourselves in the mirror. And I've been a big proponent of the schools and the teachers and the school committee and Mr. Levis. I mean, we've all spoken, and I've tried to speak up, but I think we have to take a strong look in the mirror. And I'm glad that we're revisiting this and taking a better look at this, because again, these kids, I mean, my kid's not a sports kid. I mean, my oldest one just graduated, so he's out. My youngest one's a drama kid, and that was his lane. That's what he found. And I've had this discussion with you all before at meetings, that, you know, that's his lane. So all I would say is I'm glad that we came together as a community. But I think we have to look at the big picture, that for now, it's great. I think we need to make this decision now because of sports and the timelines. But please, let's keep an eye on everybody, because there's a lot of kids that that maybe aren't in sports. And believe me, I've said this before, there's nobody that's bigger into sports or was bigger into sports than I was. But not everybody is. So we need to try and keep that in mind as well, which I'm not saying we're not, but moving forward. So I just wanted to say again, I appreciate everybody revisiting and looking at this, and trying to figure out the best way forward. But again, it's a little disconcerting as a town, as a citizen in this town, to say we're one of only 39 cities and states, 30 cities and towns that aren't able to have sports because of our budget. So what is everybody else doing right that we can't get right? So I think that's kind of a sobering thought, and we really need to look at that. My only last point in question is, and I don't know who can answer this, because it's in a way it's sad that we have to go to a GoFundMe, but how is this going to work moving forward? Are there other clubs such as drama or some of the other ones that that might fall by the wayside just because they can't do it because of budgeting? Can we do more fundraising? Is that what it's going to come to? Is that what we have to do in order to make sure that some of these clubs, still happen? What, outside of the guidelines and whether or not they're allowed to be in school or whatever. But I mean, as far as if they're able to happen, is this something that we need to look at as the method moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I can't answer that question, but it's just another hill that this community will have to climb. And we're going to try very hard to bring back what we're able to on the extracurricular activities. That's all I can say for right now. But thank you for your comments.
Okay, Kelly is up next. Kelly, if you can state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Hi, Kelly Aronakis, 9 Sugar Maple Drive. I guess I'm just confused. At the town meeting with the school committee last week, it was pretty clear there's a lot of animosity. Unless I didn't listen carefully enough, it seemed as if the council president had no appetite to put forward the 1.8 to the voters. Then we had some arbitrary numbers being thrown out, which were between 1 million and 1.2 million from the town manager, with no backup, with no clue as to why, just that was a number he threw out there. And then giving an equal amount to the municipal side, even though we constantly complain that the employees on the school side are much larger. It's an 80-20 split. Let's do 50-50. It made no sense. But I guess my large concern right now is knowing the town council has no appetite to put forward the 1.8 that's needed for the budget that's already been cut by the school committee, having no idea where the COVID money is going to come from, listening to what the school committee attorney said, that it's the responsibility to not deficit spend. I guess my question is, if the town goes forward with what they said the other night and puts forth 1.2, you have to cut an additional 600,000 and then hope for COVID money. I don't understand the logic behind this. And I guess I'm going to ask the question of, what are you going to cut? So between a 600,000 and an $800,000 cut, if the town really does put forth 1 to 1.2, and if the taxpayers approve that, I don't understand what we're doing. And I have a senior who wants to play soccer, and I have a 4th grader. But I don't understand what we're doing. It's like me saying, I really want my kitchen remodeled. I'm just going to remodel it and hope somebody gives me the money for it. I can't even imagine that as an elected body, that you're throwing caution to the wind and making decisions that, what happens now if we have to cut 600,000? We're going to have to say to parents, oh, we're cutting all sports, all extracurricular, we're cutting all AP classes, like the same crap that happened last year. I don't understand this body's fiduciary responsibility in the decision that's being made. And again, I have a senior who wants to play soccer next week. So I am all about sports and extracurricular. But like I said, it's like me saying, I want my kitchen done. Hopefully somebody gives me the money. I just don't get it. When the lawyer said, you're going to go to court, you're going to lose, and then we're going to cut tremendous things that the community is going to be in an uproar about. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Mr. Murphy, did you want to say something? Marie, did you want to say something about that?
Wrong guy.
I know.
No, I'll respond to that because it's a fair statement. And I think the community needs to hear that, you know, we're going out on a limb here. This is, you know, these are calculated risks, right? It's like if you're a town manager or somebody, you know, Sarah's position, everything you do is a risk when you're working with budgets and trying to finagle programs and move money around, right? And, you know, to the point, we had a whole list of things that we already cut. And if we go to 1.2 million, it needs to be clear that there will be things on that list, which may include spring sports. Let me say that loud and clear to the community, because I want them to know that this is a short-term gap measure. And I'm very glad that the community came to the table and is meeting us halfway. So the fiduciary responsibility, at least for sports, may be reduced to 21,000. That's still a lot of money. And it may not seem like a lot of money in the midst of 70 million, but it, you know, if your mortgage is $3,000 a month and you've got 2,000 and you want to spend 50 bucks on pizza and some drinks, 50 bucks matters, right? So, you know, Kelly, you make a good point, but we have to, as a body, decide, you know, are we going to penalize the kids right now for what council's hold? You know, council tried to put a gun, I'll be frank, council tried to put a gun to my head last week, and I'll leave Ann Dixon out of this because she's been very good about communicating with me. And I'll throw her some protection because we talk. She's had many calls on this issue. She has concern. But, you know, they basically held a gun to our head last week, and I responded, and I held my ground. I said, I cannot commit to restoring sports, and I stand by that. Because if we don't get that 1.8 million, I don't think anyone here can make that commitment. We can't. So it's up to the voters to, one, reach out to council and get them to put a budget on, a budget. And I don't know what that looks like right now. And two, if we have the availability for an increase, I need you to vote for that increase. Because come spring, we're going to be left out of options. I mean, right now I'm willing to take a risk on, you know, me personally, not the other members, but I'm willing to take a risk out of a $70 million budget for $42,000 or $60,000. To me, that's a calculated risk I'm willing to take. I'm not willing to go and tell Sarah find 500,000. 900,000, whatever it's going to take come spring. That's just plain stupid. So, Kelly, you're absolutely right. We can't make, you know, these are not easy decisions. But I think right now I'm looking at these kids standing up, and I'm willing to stand by them. And that's just me personally. The other members can chime in if they want.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. My only comment is that I think with the GoFundMe page coming up with 21,000, we're really talking 21,000. And 21,000 is a far cry from drastic cuts. If we don't get the 1.8 million, we're screwed anyway. So, you know, this seems to be a very, very, very small piece of our budget right now. And if we deficit spend, I do not believe we will be the only community in Rhode Island. Because if the federal government doesn't come forward with another bill, whether it's after the election, which probably is what's going to happen, then all of us are going to be in the red. And so talking about what we're cutting and what we're not going to cut, we're in for some very, very horrible times. And I think that we can take a chance. I said this originally in my first comments. We'll throw the dice and hope that this community will come out and vote in a 1.8 million budget for the schools and money from, and that the town council will in fact put forward that budget. No one knows for sure, but we have a deadline tomorrow for fall sports. And I'm not going to deny that the deadline means something to me and just to the kids in this community. So I appreciate your comments. I know where you're coming from, but and there's always a but. Anyway, Mr. Florio, did you have something to say?
Madam Chair, the one encouraging thing that happened at that meeting was Greg Boissonnier saying, give them what they need. Give them the rainy day fund of 1.5 million and give them the 1.8 million. The town can get their $700,000 and still get some raises. but this is what it's about. It's about the town. It's not about the piece of the budget that takes up 78%. It's about the 20%, which is, in my opinion, ass backwards. We're trying to do the best we can, and and the council just is like, I shouldn't say that. It's not the whole council, Madam Chair. It's a controlling 3 members that are like, okay, the hell with you, and it's wrong, Madam Chair. It's just wrong because they have no idea what our kids are going through. Never mind what the teachers are going through. They're the ones that have to work in this environment. And it's like a yo-yo. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. I mean, we voted to reject this budget 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and they have a meeting last week on a new budget. And the council president says, we didn't have to do this, even though the citizens voted it down. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the citizens and the employees of the school department have to come forward and fight for what they believe in, fight for these kids, fight for the town, fight for education. Because if we don't, it's not happening. We're gonna be in a terrible situation. And I agree with you totally, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Okay, Mr. Murphy, are there any other hands up? I think I do see some.
Yes. Okay, Kim, you're up next. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Hi, thank you. Kim Shockley, 12 Kingswood Drive. I just wanted to thank Attorney Anderson for his input. I think that's really important to make sure everyone understands that we're deficit spending. And I wouldn't normally want to be behind deficit spending, especially when we have the variables of no budget has been put forward yet by the town council. And even once it's put forward, we need to depend on the voters to vote yes to it. That being said, everyone's always talking about a 5-year plan and looking forward. And while paying for these sports for the fall is a definite gamble, we are going to start losing students to other schools so quickly if we don't have sports, extracurricular activities, and honors programs for them. And we're not just going to lose students, we're going to lose our best and brightest and most talented students. I went to the rally that was thrown the other night, and I've listened to those students, and anyone who listened to them would know that they're well educated, just based on how well spoken they are. It was really inspiring to listen to them. But also, I think that's what led to a GoFundMe, which is great. And I donated to it too, because while my kids aren't there yet, I want those programs to be available to our current students. But just tell me if I'm right or wrong. If we use $22,000 in GoFundMe money, we're going to have to come up with it year after year after year, because it's not going to be in the budget. So it kind of creates a wonderful short-term solution to a long-term problem. So like I said, it's just with having it be so easy to go to any school you want for free, cutting these sports right now would cause an avalanche of problems down the road, I would think. And thank you. I just wanted to give my input.
Madam Chair, can I just jump in for 1 second quickly?
Oh, sure.
Craig, sorry. I just want to be clear that everybody understands that middle school sports have been suspended for the fall. So we're talking right now, these sports, they're just the high school sports.
Yep.
Just want to be clear that everybody understands that.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
to the point about creating a deficit, not necessarily, because if we take that money, we spend it on sports, yes, we all know that all of this is a short-term fix. We're really counting on the long-term, but we had this built into our budget that we submitted to council. So sports was included in total. so it doesn't necessarily create a hole. And Sarah, you can chime in on that, but.
If they fund the ones we need.
Correct. I think that's the key, is if they fund it.
And that's true.
That's yet to be told. Thank you, Kim. We appreciate your comments. The next person, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, Brenda, you're up next. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone. Brenda, you're still muted. Okay, we'll come back to Brenda. Kelly, you're up next. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Hello, it's actually Anthony Carpinello, 28 Westview Drive. I'd like to start out by thanking all of you for your hard work. I know this is very difficult, especially talking about cutting anything that involves the students. And secondly, I was appalled at the way the town council treated Mr. Levis, especially Mr. McGee. There were a few town council members who stuck up for the school committee, but I cannot believe that no one stopped him from that 2-minute rant on Mr. Levis. As taxpayers, we should all be ashamed to be Coventry residents if he's the president of our town council. And I hope he's listening to this. To get to the point, it's going to take funding outside of the schools. I think residents understand that. Being a member of the football team, my wife being the president of the Booster Club helps the teams tremendously. And I think more sports are going to have their own booster clubs, because some sports don't have booster clubs, and the booster clubs they have don't raise as much money than they should. There are many people who are more than willing to donate and volunteer many hours to the booster clubs to support those sports. If sports are cut, as Mrs. Shockley said, the cost to the schools is going to be tenfold, because you are going to have students transferring in droves. I know of at least half a dozen athletes who will transfer, and my son is one of them. He will be transferring, and we very well may move altogether. Since I've been here 5 years, my taxes have gone up over $3,000. I can't imagine paying that kind of money and having a school that doesn't have activities. So I've spoken up at town council meetings. I know this is a problem that didn't happen overnight. Again, I know you're doing your best, but in addition to losing all those students, we're also going to lose many of those donors and volunteers that help the booster clubs. So I think taking the risk of supporting these sports is well worth it. I mean, and it's not just sports, it's extracurricular activities. Football's not being played because the governor doesn't want it. I still donated to that fund. So, I don't want people to think it's just, coach is just looking for sports. As I said at the rally, just as happy as we are watching our players' success on the field, we're just as proud of those players when they're helping the unified sports and getting involved in all those things, because that's what we as parents are trying to make our kids be, well-rounded students. But I want to thank you again very much, and hope that we still have. My wife's telling me that yes, sideline cheer was approved because it's not just for football. So that's just an FYI.
Thank you, David.
No, Anthony.
Anthony.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I
But
should,
thank
I
you
should,
again.
I should have said Mr. Carpinello and I would have been safe.
I thought your
Thank
name
you.
was Kelly, so.
Yeah, yeah, all right. But thank you all for your hard work.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Mr. Murphy, I see.
All right. C. Murray, you're next. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
My name is Claire Murray. I live at 82 Doolittle Street. And I just have a question. If you are willing as a committee to deficit spend for sports, which I do think is important, are you also willing to deficit spend for the other co-curricular activities that are just as important to a lot of other parents whose children do not play sports, but feel just as passionate about their activities?
Yeah, I think we already answered that in the earlier that we talked about restoring at least the fall. So we had talked about the 18,000. The thing is that at this point, we don't know what can and cannot go forward. So, you know, I would, that's going to be a discussion and anybody else can chime in on this, but I know personally, I think it's important. But again, we can only commit for the short term because this is all a calculated risk, you know? And I'm gonna go back to an earlier point that Anthony made, because people's taxes have gone up and we understand that. This is always a balancing act. We get hit over the head for running the schools. The fact is, as Mr. Anderson said, there's plenty of things that we could potentially cut, right? But we choose not to because we know that beyond the basic education plan, that all of these things are important. Now, if we wanted to focus just on taxes, and that we are just if we are a community that only wants to just have low taxes, then we can strip this school system down to the nuts and bolts. But to Anthony's comment is, you're going to have a community of kids that go to other schools outside of our community. You're going to have kids going to Pontigansett and Warwick and everywhere else they can find because they don't want to go to Coventry schools. So that's part of the fiduciary responsibility we have as well, is with the way the state views our students in the state aid, keeping those students here, not only for a fiscal responsibility, it's the right thing to do. You pay taxes in this town, you should have the availability of your child getting a quality education right here in Coventry. But it is a balancing act. And this community has to decide in the very near future, because we've had many years where that decision's been made to the opposite side, and this is why we're here. So if it's all about taxes, there's certainly cuts to be made, and we're going to find out come spring. Because we're just telling you, we're warning you, if this goes down, and that's not a threat, it's just that if we do not get that 1.8 appropriated and passed, there will be additional cuts, and that's part of our job as a school committee. That's not right or wrong. It's part of the duty we took on when we got elected. So to the current caller's comments, yes, we are looking at that for the fall, and we did have a discussion on it.
Ms. Murray,
Okay, I just feel like it wasn't answered. Nobody else chimed in and said whether you are willing to deficit spend for these other co-curricular activities and things that are important.
Claire, I think we all realize other activities are important. And in fact, we discussed some of those tonight. I think the committee was not ready to say every club would come back this fall. And until we get a list from administration and we can actually look at that list and get a recommendation from administration, and I assume that will happen with them conferring with the principals in the individual schools. If they get a recommendation from Brooke Maycumber, for example, from the high school that says it's imperative that student council comes back, our class advisors come back, whatever is on the table, we will consider at our next meeting. And if it means that we have to deficit spend, then yes, I suspect this committee would go forward with deficit spending. But again, it certainly wasn't, it was on our agenda tonight, but it wasn't really clearly spelled out. And this committee did not feel comfortable enough to say or enumerate on which one of those curricular activities were going to be reinstated. So we decided to table that piece of the motion. So tonight, because we have a deadline of tomorrow for interscholastic sports, we decided that that was the primary thing that we had to vote on tonight. So stay tuned about the extracurricular. You do not have to convince us that there is a need for some of those other things for our students to feel like they have a reason in some ways to go to school.
Thank you.
Claire, what we have to do is we have to make a judgment as a community. Is it worth it? Is it worth our kids getting a great, not a good education, a great education? We've been having celebrations of our children and what they've done for the last 4 years. And the council, some council members, like Dr. Dixon, she's been there. The others, not. Markham absent. So we need people like you, Claire, to stand up and say, education in our community means something. You look at the tax rate in Coventry and what we pay per student, and it's not the most. We don't pay the highest rate. We're not even close. You look what they pay in Massachusetts for their communities. There's a value to education in Massachusetts. Somewhere we got lost. Somewhere our council decided we're not valuable. We're not worth it. And we need parents to come forward and students to come forward to say, yes, we are worth it. Yes, we are. And that's what I say, Claire. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, I think I see one more hand, Mr. Murphy.
Yes. Okay, Brenda, you're up. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Nope, I'm sorry, wrong button. Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. So we've heard from the public. There's a motion on the floor. If there aren't any other comments from the school committee, I will call for a roll call vote.
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you for that discussion. I think it was very valuable. And thank you to the public for all your comments and your support for this particular issue. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the letter for the to the Auditor General. It was our reference number 2. Since it was written by Mrs. Mandarelli, maybe you'd like to speak to this first.
Yes, so I don't know if it wants to go up, if you want it to go up on screen or not. It is a little bit lengthy, but we are required to notify the Auditor General. It's actually within 5 days of having a projected deficit budget. I had spoken with the Auditor General several times, including last week before the Town Council meeting, because if a different motion had been made, I may not have filed that letter. But because we had to make a motion to balance a budget, bringing it forward pre-COVID with the cuts that had been previously made. And then we still had the COVID expenditures that were required to be covered. We did have to put notification out to the Auditor General. So that is really to put them on notice that we're looking to run a deficit this year. We also CC'd the Department of Ed. That's our only requirement with the Department of Ed as of right now, is to include them on any communications with the Auditor General. Typically, when you file, you're supposed to include a corrective action plan, which means how you're going to come up or resolve your deficit in the year. Unfortunately, because we don't have a state budget or a town budget, my response was actually that I don't currently have a plan to correct that deficit spend. So we can continue moving forward. You know, I know we have the COVID budget and see what happens with the town. At least our basis is covered, but I think that the reality of what we put in the letter is pretty accurate. Even though some numbers may go up and down, all projections are leading to that deficit. So unless there's any other questions about the letter specifically, I'm happy to answer them, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Pearson, did you have any questions or comments about the letter?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Kalunian, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, do you have anything?
First thing is, Sarah, thanks for providing us with a letter. It was actually very, not informative, but it kind of summarized what we have to this point. So I think that's important. I think it was very concise. Only question I have is, what do we anticipate in response for action from the auditor? Do we expect just a letter, or do we expect any sort of recourse? What's the next step?
So I'm actually surprised I haven't heard anything back from them yet, but I did have a conversation with Rena previously. So I think they're probably trying to digest it. My guess is that they're probably trying to watch and see what Coventry is going to do. So, you know, I will communicate with them as we go along, but until we have a town budget, I don't think there's much to do. And until we have a state budget, I don't think that there is much to do. I'll be honest with you, I've never had to file a corrective action plan before to run a deficit like this. So this will be my first go around at this as well. So I don't know if Mr. Anderson has anything else to add. He may have more experience with it. My goal is just to, if there's any statutory requirements that we have to adhere to along the way, then we'll make sure that we do that.
I think what will happen is that the Auditor General will direct you to write a plan. And the plan will be based on whatever the information is at that time. And if you don't have a town budget at that time, the Auditor General's response was, there's no exception in the law for a town that doesn't have a budget. You actually do legally have a budget. It's the same budget you had last year. And you will need to develop a plan, and the school committee will have to approve that plan, and the school committee will have to live with that plan. So I think that's the next step. You know, when the return mail comes, you'll be told to write your plan. And I think that will be a very uncomfortable process for this committee.
Understood. I appreciate the direct response. I wish the state had to have such a plan, but I'll digress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio, anything?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. That letter had to be very difficult to write. And thank you, Mr. Anderson, for being very blunt and telling us the way it is. I hope and pray that the council does the right thing by us, but they haven't so far. And it would be nice to see them do the right thing. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I don't have any comments, just except to say thank you, Sarah. And we will cross the bridge that we have to cross when we get there. I'm not really sure what the Auditor General, if we drag our feet a little bit on the plan, what happens? Maybe Mr. Anderson, you could tell us that. Can the Auditor General come in and take over our budget, our town, or whatever? I'm sorry?
The General Assembly has set a hierarchy of steps that ultimately can lead to a town being placed in receivership or a town actually even being required to file for bankruptcy as Central Falls did. There are various triggers that cause that to happen. I frankly am not familiar enough with what the town's finances look like on the town side to tell where you would stand with regard to that latter. The issue one thing that you are doing, however, is to the extent that the school department is thinking that there is a magic bullet in terms of suing the town council for relief, the longer this drags on, the less sympathetic the court will be that you didn't resolve your problems and instead you all sat and hoped that they would go away, and they haven't. So I want to make it very clear that doing nothing, it's like having a disease. Doing nothing is not going to make the disease better.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. I guess we can move on to, I should ask the public if there are any questions about this particular letter. I don't see any hands raised.
There are none.
Okay. Oh, nope. Came and went. All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the COVID budget discussion, which was our reference, part of our, multiple references, 3A, B, C, and D. Mr. Levis, did you want to start that?
I'm going to start that quickly, and then, so you have, actually, we added something later on this evening. There's something from Creative Environment Corporation, that's our consultant for our air ventilation that we had hired and contracted with. We had thrown a dollar amount on, and that's still in progress, but I've been working with her and Ms. Reddy, and she gave us a list. I think it's of close to $800,000, but so we put a lot of supplemental documents, and what I'm asking the committee to do tonight, and I know it's been brought up, it was brought up at that meeting Wednesday night. This has been on, just so you know, this has been on, the public knows too, this has been on our agenda for many, many school committee meetings, and we give the best answer we can. Nobody's experienced this before. We've put forward what we believe we needed. Again, a lot of it is, whether people like the answer or not, we're not sure. I shared some information with the committee today about substitutes, but we have no idea how many subs we're really going to need moving forward, because we have no idea how many teachers or staff may be out or quarantined. It's just unknown. And that's our best answer. And I don't think anybody would have an answer. Once we get into this a few months, maybe we'll be able to make some inferences moving forward. But what I do want to say is we had a meeting yesterday, myself, Ms. Mandrelli, Mr. Hvac, and Mr. Arnett. And I think it was a very positive meeting. I know they're going to put forward something, and we'll see what that is. But it was a good atmosphere in the meeting. And what I committed leaving that meeting was to make sure, because it's brought up several times, this budget hasn't been voted on. So I'm asking the committee to vote on a budget that we're putting forward tonight. And this is the opportunity to ask questions. But I know that there's a willingness, at least it was presented, a willingness to support us with an approved budget. So we're going to be asking you to vote on this tonight. And I'm going to be giving the budget that you vote on, and hopefully a budget will pass, a COVID-19 budget. And I'm going to give that to Mr. Hvac. And, we talk about putting Ms. Mandrelli, people in a tough position. Our proposed revenue stream, and that was a question all along, where's the money going to come from? How do you vote on a budget when there's no revenue stream? So our revenue stream, our expectation is it's going to be out of the rainy day funds. Some of the money we've had, you guys had approved $1,077,000. And so anyways, having said that, I don't know, Ms. Mandrelli, if you want to make a few comments, and then we'll take on questions and answer them. If you have questions on the information we gave you, we'll do the best we can to answer them.
Right. So just in your document, really, the primary page that you'd be looking at would be the COVID response budget only, since we're just focusing on the COVID response budget. And that's where you can see it's a similar format to last time. I just pulled out the regular operating budget. So we have the federal funds and then the total local funds, which would be the FY 2020 carryover, and then the rainy day or surplus funds. That is really just a plug number to offset the total expenditures. We did pare down the expenses some. So in the expense detail, I did highlight in like a light green how we shifted them. So as we get a little bit further along, I did prorate the salaries and benefits for some of the staff. I did also increase the substitute costs though, based on rate adjustments that were approved last week. There's a couple of other things that we're kind of battling with right now with the federal application for the $747,000. So that money has to be spent by December 31st. But they're actually now saying if you buy like an annual software license, so we expanded some software to support the students on distance learning. They're now saying we can only include 6 months of the cost in. Which is not how I had originally understood it. I knew we had to spend the money by December 31st, but I didn't know that they weren't going to cover annual licenses that we were doing or we were purchasing specifically for response to this. So I did challenge that. They were passing that along to another body to look at it. So I did have to shift some of those costs to a 50-50 for the half of the year. Let's see, the electrostat. Yep.
Can you put it up on the screen? Would you mind?
Yeah, Jim, I don't know if I can share my screen or if you have it, either way is fine.
Just need to tell me which document to put up.
Oh gosh, what is it called?
It's the.
I have my Excel spreadsheet, so I don't know what it was labeled in the packet. My apologies.
It was the.
Even just the
COVID
reference
budget.
number. I'm
It
sorry.
would be reference number
I think-
3.
Number 3, the third and fourth page, I think you're referring to.
Yes, third and fourth, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Sarah. I just think
Oh,
it's
that's
important
okay.
that other people can follow along with us.
Okay. Yep. So then, Jim, if you just keep scrolling down to, oh, it's this page, but I don't know if you can turn it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then actually, if you can just scroll down a little further, I might even be on the 4th page now. Yep, you can. If you can go up just a little bit so that we can get as much as, yeah, okay. So some of the other items that we did, Mr. Arnett, after last week's meeting, did send me an email saying that REMA was not going to approve any of our expenses that we put in. Because our buildings were closed, they basically disregarded. So the option was to pull out the schools and try and get the town their reimbursement, or to try and appeal with the school. My reaction right now is to pull out the school portion of it. We ran a surplus obviously in FY 20. I didn't account for any reimbursement in there, so that 990 stays true. And I think if it can expedite the town getting reimbursement on their end, then that would be what we should do. So some things like the electrostatic sprayers, I'm kind of shifting those around. I'll probably shift those back into the grant now that I had to pull some technology software out of the grant. So I'm still doing shuffling as we go along here. The other item is in my original COVID budget, we had additional buses in there. So we had 10 additional buses to start. I know Mr. Levis will get to this later, but now it's looking that we could need about 6, but we are still going to do another survey, and we're running into situations where families are called and they say that they don't need a bus, or on the flip side, they show up at a bus stop and there are more kids at a bus. So we're just trying to balance that out. So I put in 3 buses here. As the original numbers stand right now, it looks like we could need up to 6, but we're still trying to do another survey to see what will happen. So we have some washes in and out, and I truly expect I could probably give you a new budget every single week, even probably multiple times a week, because of how things are shuffling back and forth. But this is where it stands now. So it did drop that that total need from the town just a little bit. And that 1.546 is what we're showing as our revenue need as a carryover. Again, if things go up, such as the need for more transportation, if we have higher burn rates and all the things that I've said previously, this is a really hard number to get our arms around. And whatever happens with the operating budget, while we have to look at them separately, if not enough money is allocated to cover the COVID expenses. So let's say hypothetically that the town only wants to give $1 million towards COVID and our COVID expenses run 1.5. We have to draw on that from the local budget. You know, we're talking about these like there's two different numbers, but they're one and the same. It's just we're hoping that this budget goes away after next year. But from an FY21 perspective, this shouldn't be looked at just in isolation of our expenditures, but rather with, you know, with whatever else is happening with our expenditures in our regular budget, as well as whatever else is happening with our state education aid and funding sources. So this is the latest as we have it now. One of the other areas I know that had generated some discussion was the purchase service for HVAC. If you scroll up, oh, actually, it's right at the top of that screen. We had put in a ballpark number of 500,000 and we put 80,000 into the grant, looking for a good chunk of that to come from local. I know Mr. Levis will speak to that a little later on, but even that number looks like it's coming in higher. And I know that an email was shared that, you know, we have some schools that classrooms are operating right now because we can have windows open and fans in, but we're going to have some tough decisions to make once it gets cooler and we need to start closing those windows. So some of this stuff we need to move forward on. And that's it, unless there's any questions from the committee or public.
Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Pearson, questions?
Back to the REMA comment, so I can understand that a little more. So all the expenses we incurred last fiscal year due to COVID-related expenses were rejected by REMA. What was, other than schools being closed, what was the rationale, or was that it?
That was pretty much it. I can go back and pull up the email from Mr. Arnett and share it with the committee. But that was pretty much the bulk of the reason.
Oof. Okay. I have no words. Okay. That's it for me for now.
So can I say, Madam Chair, I just want to say, we're going to be asking the committee, like I said, in our meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Mangiarelli, not to put you on the spot, but I am almost 60, so that we said that we would vote on this. I think the bottom line is we wanted to provide some supporting data on some of our requests. I know there have been comments made about some of the requests, and like I said, we give our best information we can. My expectation, I hope tonight, is that we put forward that number of 1.5 some odd million dollars, and we vote on that as the our need for COVID, and submit that to Mr. Wazika. And that's what I had promised at the outcome of today. Again, it's up to the committee to say yay or nay, but that'll help us at least go to the council and start getting some of those funds. And I think the other conversation was around maintenance of effort, and that, you know, we had reached the max of our maintenance of effort with our ask in terms of the FY21 budget. We're hoping that most of these expenses will go away next year, though I think a conversation needs to take place, not tonight, but obviously when we do our other budget around custodians at least. You know, I don't think that we can start saying that, you know, we'll add custodians and then sanitation doesn't take precedence moving forward. So anyways, I just wanted to make sure for clarification purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Okay, Mrs. Colonian, any questions?
No, thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. I appreciate it. You've got a line item in here for tents, and I noticed somebody asked a question, so I'm gonna ask for that person. Why 49,000 for tents?
So that was based on the quotes that we were receiving. The governor, actually, I believe, is the one that where this came out, was she encouraged outdoor classrooms. So we were looking to have several tents at multiple schools for 2 to 3 months, so that they would have an outdoor gathering space and they would have a little bit more flexibility to move some students around and fresh air. Mr. Levis or Mr. Cowart, you can add us to exactly how the principals will be using these, but that was the reason for the tents being in there. So these aren't just little pop-up tents, these are pretty big structures.
Is this used for like in the classroom? Do they go out for mask breaks and so on and so forth? When they come back to school, will that be part of the,
Yeah, I mean, they can use them for a variety of purposes. They can have lunch under them. They can do lessons under, these are large tents. I think they're 20 by 30.
Oh, okay.
I believe they're like wedding tents. They're
Yeah.
not little 8 by 10s. Granted, this is New England. I actually talked to one of the fire marshals today. There's procedures that we need to follow in terms of how, notifying, getting permits. I mean, there's a lot to it. There has to be fire extinguishers, but the fire marshal I spoke to today said they would work with us on that. And we're limited in terms of the time, but we're trying to be as creative. Unfortunately, we just, it wasn't that long ago when a certain amount was approved for us to move forward.
Right.
But we're still in the process of doing that. So that's why they're still on there. Again, if we can get 2 months worth of use out of them and give some flexibility to all the schools, it'll be helpful.
And you may have to use them in the spring also, so.
Right. Well, right now we're focused on just here and now, that we're focused on a couple of months, we'll see what the spring brings.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Murray.
I appreciate the comments on the tents because I know another community purchased tents and then the fire marshal came out and said they couldn't use them. So there's, I will say this, Sarah, you must always feel like you're walking uphill on this because it seems like with REMA and some of the other answers you get from the state, it's always like, they say they're being helpful, but then out of the other side, they're beating you over the head. One thing I just wanted to bring up, there were other references in our packet, and I do appreciate that because I'm been the most critical one about backup information. But it's extremely helpful for me, and I want to mention them because there's a lot of public out there. There was a letter from the nurses advocating for the additional nurses and outlining their individual duties and the reasoning why they feel that they need to have that additional staffing. It's extremely important to me to have that feedback as a committee member, because it lets me know the boots on the ground people doing this day after day support this and need the help. Transportation, you also had another reference to that. Email discussion about the buses and the fact that they're trying to do what they can to make our existing bus fleet work, but ultimately it may not be enough. And I'm assuming you've included that in the budget. You've also included some information on filter changes that are required for the MERV 13s, which I think was about a $5,000 impact. It wasn't huge. And some information on the custodians and dispersion of use based on a square foot basis, which I think was also important. Hopefully you can make this information public, or I can certainly make it public as well. But I think it's important for the community to understand that we're basing some of these decisions on data and the people who are in the field doing this stuff day to day. That has been my argument from the beginning. And the only reason I push back is sometimes I just need that additional data to make sure that we're vetting this through. I also appreciate the fact that you prorated stuff, which I did not see in the earlier budgets, but we are into the school year and that is a question that is likely to come up. So, it's not what you needed at the beginning, it's what you need now. And I know we're probably gonna have to have some difficulties hiring people moving forward now that we're into the school year, but we're certainly not alone. Last thing I'll say, and I didn't really have any specifics on the budget. A lot of it we've seen before. The proration kind of reflects some of the downward numbers, but obviously you bumped up substitutes, which I do think is wise. We're paying a new rate, which again, I had some issues with the backup data on that, but I am in support of that new rate, mainly because I know, and if you read the paper, it's come up recently, that it's very difficult to get substitutes, period. And it's going to be extremely difficult to get substitutes over the next year. So,
Mr. Murray, just to add to that quickly, is that I think I had reported that we had 40, the day it was posted, we had 40, but Mr. Coward told me today, by the end of the day, I believe we had almost 100. And these are brand new applicants, potential applicants. So I think, and Mr. Anderson had brought that point up where now we weren't trying to compete with the same subs. When we posted it to them, our pool, we get about 1 or 2 additional. But the fact is we're bringing in a whole different audience, which I think is phenomenal. We didn't have that many entire year last year. And in one day, so I want to, I appreciate you guys supporting that, the committee. And I want to thank Mr. Coward and Ms. Riolis and, our HR staff. But it's, like I said, in one day, we received double the amount of applicants we've received in a year. So.
yeah, and I saw the email today. That's positive development. I think, it was needed. It gives us a better pool to pick from too. So that's always a good thing, quality, not quantity. So, and the last thing I'll say is I know there's been a lot of stuff thrown at council and there's a lot of back and forth. And I'm as much a party to this as anybody else. And, it's part of my attitude shift to trying to move forward. I still lay that 1.8 million at their feet. I'll never get off that because I remember the meeting where I said it. That said, I ultimately have to let it go. We need to move forward and I hope we all can. I know that there's been a difficult tone, but I was encouraged to hear that there was a productive meeting with Ed across the street and John Arnett, that we can hopefully find a new path forward and figure out how to find some common ground. I lay a lot at the feet of council, but we all know that a lot's laid at many other feet, including the state and the feds who have not stepped up. Legislature that's gone vacant. There's plenty of blame to go around. I'm not giving them a pass. I'll never do that because I need to fight for the school district. But I do think setting a new tone is helpful to the debate and trying to get this move forward. And to that, I want to thank our superintendent for going across the street with Sarah, sitting down, having a civil conversation and trying to work this out. I think that's important. And I want to give him credit for that. So thanks. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
So the amount is 1,546,000. Can we round that out to 1,550,000? Sarah?
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I am concerned my expenses are low anyway. So if you round up, I'm certainly not going to complain on that one.
Okay. So the town has, from what I learned at the last meeting, they have a rainy day fund with $11 million. And they're having issues with giving us 1.55.
Mr. Florio, I just want to be clear. I didn't hear that they having issues, right? We just
okay.
If you listen to me we had a very positive meeting yesterday, and I am very grateful to Mr. Arnett and Mr. Wazika and for coming. And they actually came over to our building, and I appreciate that. We had a very positive. We talked about FY21. We talked about COVID-19. The priority for us, right, for me, was to get you to vote because it's been stressed over and over again. So the revenue stream, we're doing what we said. I don't, I'll be critical of individuals when I need to be also, but they were very gracious in terms of working with us yesterday. A very positive conversation. And so I don't want to turn this into a negative, you know.
No,
So
no,
I'm
but
just
we've
saying
been through
that-
this before, Mr. Levis.
But don't forget, there's
Remember?
only so much we can
We've been
ask
through
for.
this before. I
Right, but
know.
we can only ask for so much because of impacting the bond rating. And like I said, I don't want to get into that because we could have had these conversations months ago. I've been having them with the town manager and different council members all along. So I think let's take, you know, one step at a time. And
Okay, so how much would you recommend?
we just told you that, Mr. Florio.
1,550,000, correct, Mr. Levis?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm not willing to give up the maintenance of effort, the 1.8 million.
So we're talking about COVID-19 tonight, though, Dave.
It's two different things, Mr.
Yeah, well, I
Florio.
don't want to go. I don't want to go backwards. I want to be clear so that this has become an issue, right? This has become political. I want to make sure this committee votes on this tonight and we give it over to them tomorrow. And like I said, whether 3-2 vote or 1-5-0, but we need to give it to them. You heard loud and clear. This is a budget we haven't voted on.
Are they going to sit with us? Are they going to sit with us again, Mr. Levis?
Dave, I have no idea. You have a counterpart. I've asked school committee members several times to talk to the different districts.
I have.
Tonight, I would like to get this budget, you know, voted on, make a motion and vote on it. So that's what I'm asking.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, I have a question.
Sure.
Question is, Mr. Anderson, if we have another meeting and a member of the council decides he's going to land-based superintendent, can I say something? Can I defend him? John, can I defend him?
The answer is, if the meeting is called by the school committee, it is up to the chair to recognize members of the school committee to speak. And we have certain standards that I think the school committee should be proud of in terms of the way these meetings have been conducted, as long as I know Coventry, compared to some other school committee meetings I've seen around the state. And I'm confident that the chair person will allow you to speak to the extent that it is germane to the issue at hand. That's the role of the chair.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Do you need a motion, Madam Chair? I know you want to.
I haven't made my comments yet.
I know that. I'm just asking. I'll be happy to make the motion.
Interestingly, I really don't have much to say except that I appreciate the work and all the time that it's taken to bring this and the frustration to bring this budget to us pretty much at all the last few meetings. I wouldn't even want to venture to guess how many meetings we've kind of seen this information. And I appreciate the work that was done putting this all together. And I'm very hopeful and very glad that the town manager and the town budget director are asking for us to vote on this so that they can take it the next step to the town council. So that gives me hope. And so if I could have a motion, that would be great.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve a $550,000 budget, COVID budget for approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Florio. Is there a second?
I second.
And before we call, I'm sorry, what?
Make a motion as presented or amended as opposed to just a round number. The reason is because this ties into the line item budget. And I don't want to be accused as being arbitrary on this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'd much rather do the exact numbers as well. So Mr. Florio, could you say the exact number?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, Madam Chair, but
I will say
Sarah,
it. I will say it and you can just say so moved. So we would like to approve the recommended COVID budget of $1,546,677.58.
So moved.
Second.
There a second? Thank you. And before I call for the vote, I don't see any hands up, Mr. Murphy. Is that true?
That is true. There's no hands raised.
All right, thank you. So could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colonian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries 5-0. Again, thank you, Sarah, for all the hard work on this and all the people that gave you the information that made this budget be what it is. So moving on to number 10, agenda item, the superintendent's report, Mr. Levis.
Sorry, just had to unmute there. So we've had again, this is a relative statement, but I can't thank our staff, educators, support staff, clerks. We talked about facilities maintenance. I also want to thank our food service, our bus drivers. This is extremely challenging, how we're opening. We've never done this before. But the willingness that people have, the attitude that they're bringing, in our students, it's been a blessing just to be able to walk around our schools and see students. I went into the middle school and some of our special programs the other day during lunch and spent a good amount of time talking to students and, popped into a few schools, and it's just amazing. And I can't thank our community enough for the effort they put in. Our plan is to continue phasing in next week. I believe it's grades 3 and 4. The following week, grades 5 and 6. And then the following week, I know we were talking about people not being in our schools, but very shortly, we'll have students back. Every student that chooses to come back will be in front of a teacher for at least, our elementary students for 4 days a week, and our other students 6 to 12, couple of days a week through the hybrid model. And so again, I want to thank everybody. Tonight we just want to talk, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cowart. We're going to make a little change in terms of our high school start date because of SATs, and we'll post it, but we want to bring it to the committee first. So Don, if you don't mind speaking a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'll be brief. So the high school administration had brought to my attention that the SAT, PSAT scheduled for October 14th, which is the Wednesday, doesn't really match up with our hybrid schedule in terms of A to L and M to Z students, because we're testing kids across the board, the full alphabet. And we have a few hundred students plus taking the assessment in school, and it needs to be proctored, and it needs to be proctored appropriately. And so what Mrs. Bowden and Mrs. Maycumber had recommended, and I think it's a good solution, is kids will have distance learning day on the 13th and 14th. The 14th, the kids who are taking the standardized test will come in for the standardized test, and we'll start the hybrid rotation on the Thursday and the Friday. And that gives each cohort 1 day of in school versus us having a group of kids come in on Tuesday, nobody come in on Wednesday except for kids taking standardized tests, and then that same group coming back in again on Thursday, and then that one group only having Friday. It kind of creates a little bit more balance in their schedule, and it gives them an opportunity to proctor that test on the 14th without too much disruption. I don't know if there's any questions about that. It seems like a pretty easy fix to what could very, very much be a very complicated situation with the number of kids who are taking that test and, who didn't get an opportunity to take an SAT in the spring. There's a lot of interest here, so we're trying to do whatever we can to give the kids a good testing environment. That's all I have.
Hey, Mr. Levis.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Mr. Carl. We want to present that, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank our administrators. I'm always thinking of them, but I often forget to thank them. They've been working so hard fielding questions, and our nurses too. I've said this often, but just a snapshot in a day of a nurse. With this contact tracing component, whether it's presumptive positive, so it may not be a positive, but we've had nurses that have been working with the Department of Health from 7:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. And again, I appreciate your support of this budget, COVID budget, because we talked before about custodians and how they're working and everybody, and just this allows us to go forward again, and knowing that we can put forward, hopefully that, I believe the town will work with us and we can provide the support that our teachers, our students that need in the building. So again, I want to thank the committee for voting on this COVID budget, and we'll keep posting. I'll do my weekly update tomorrow, and I'll share some information with you, and we'll try to make sure that we keep you posted in terms of the opening. But again, not to be redundant, but I usually am. I just can't thank everybody in this community enough for pulling together and supporting the opening. I know there's a lot of fear. And again, I think people's experience, right, it brings knowledge to life, and it allows them to attack their fears. And that's what I've seen our staff, our students, and our families do. So I just want to say, I'm so appreciative of everybody's effort so far, and I want to thank this community for supporting it.
And Mr. Levis, if I could make one last comment, if you don't mind, to kind of concur with what you had mentioned. The soft opening approach was by far the best thing we did. When you talk to our building administrators about rolling in a few grade levels every week and having an opportunity to monitor bus loads, to really tweak their arrival and dismissal, to adjust what lunch periods look like, to have kids have time to come in and acclimate themselves back into school for the first time since March. It has been by far the best thing and the smartest thing we did. I know it's slow, and I know there's some people in the community that really need their kids in school as soon as possible. But in terms of the functionality of a school, it was by far the best approach we could have taken.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pearson, did you have any questions or follow-up comments?
As a parent, not as a school committee member, I'll say thank you in advance for doing this. It makes that testing day a lot easier to negotiate. As a school committee member, also say thank you for as you said, putting together this solution. It's one of those low-hanging fruit, easy solutions that once I'm sure you figured it out, you said, aha, simple, let's do it. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. So Mrs. Colonian, any comments or
I
questions?
just want to say thank you. I'm not a parent anymore. Well, I'm a parent, but not, my kids are out of school. So, but I know that can be difficult, and it was such an easy fix. It really was. So
yeah,
kudos.
Great. Mr. Murray.
Only happened one time. Same thing. Thank you very much for working the problem. Don, I know you had help from the others at the building level. And I know we had a lot of questions on the SATs during the reopening meetings early on. And this came up as a chronic thing. And I'm glad that we've come to some resolution. We can tell parents that, there will be an SAT, that there's hope on everything, and we're working the problem. The other thing I just want to say, as Mr. Pearson said, I am a parent. My daughter at the middle school, I've had, I was concerned, not gonna lie. Distance learning is hard as it is, but she's been doing well. It seems like she's progressing along. And I've gotten some other feedback from parents that have positive experiences. So I agree. I think the soft rollout was a smart move. I think while it requires a little more patience, allowed you to maybe work through some of the issues, and it seems like it's going fairly smooth so far. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
Mr. Levis, do we have money for hybrid learning? Mr. Levis? Mr. Levis.
Yeah, I'm here, Ms. Fly. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, me either.
I'm just wondering, hybrid learning, which is like, are we going to do that at the high school?
Yeah, that's what we are doing, Mr.
That's
Flora.
what we are doing.
Okay.
So
And
Dave,
at the
what would be
middle
the
as well.
difference? What would be the difference in budget? Like as far as if we're gonna, or.
I just think
anything?
it's not really an agenda topic right now. I mean, I
that's
think
true.
in terms of the thing, I think that was my answer, not to be rude, but we are doing it, so.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Florio?
Thank you so much, Mr. Levis. You are so patient. It's incredible. Thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair. And thank everybody for their patience. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Florio. And finally, I just want to thank Mr. Levis for the update and Mr. Cowett for coming up with a good solution for the testing at the high school. And I agree. I think, you guys worked really, really hard on the reopening of Coventry schools. It's been a long fought process, a lot of work, and it looks like it's bearing fruit. So I commend all of the administrators, all the teachers, for all our principals for all the hard work, and our students who are glad to be back, that are engaging in online learning, and the students that are in the classrooms. I'm grateful that we've been able to follow through and get our kids back in school. And with that, I guess we can move on to citizens' comments. Are
We
there
do have one hand raised. I don't know if it's on this topic.
Okay. Well, we'll
Actually,
bring them
looks
in.
like Okay. Okay, Michelle, you're up. If you could state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
Yes, Michelle Bergantino, 63 Fieldstone Drive, Coventry.
Hi, neighbor.
Hi, neighbor. I just wanted to express some concern. I don't know if other parents are feeling this, but I have two high schoolers. So I have an 11th grader and 12th grader. My 11th grader is going in once a week because she's in a CTE program. So a couple of things. She goes in for CTE. She has to stay after the class to go to Zoom for her other two classes. And the Wi-Fi in the library has been really glitchy. So she has a class that she's missing parts of the class. So they, Ms. Ferguson had told them that they could leave at lunchtime to come home for the very last class so they can Zoom from home. She did that this week. She doesn't drive yet, so she got picked up. And that was better for the last class. But her English class that she's in the library for, Zooming for, she's missing part of the class. I don't know if the teachers are understanding some of the circumstances. I mean, there hasn't really been an issue, but she comes home and she's like, well, she's missing part of the class. The other piece is the amount of work my kids are getting. I don't know if this is consistent with other parents. I mean, they're still doing homework now at 8:30. From 8:30 this morning. They have not left computers. I have a daughter who has not left her computer for 12 hours. I'm concerned because I don't think it's healthy. I mean, she's sitting at a table working right now as we're speaking. We got another 2-3 weeks of this. And I don't know if other people are experiencing, I don't know if my kids are just spending a lot of time doing homework. And she's got honors classes and stuff. So I expect homework, but this is a 12-hour day and she's not done. So that concerns me, I think, because from a health standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, it bothers me. So I just wanted to mention that. And I don't know what the teachers are being asked to do as far as their workload, but
Michelle,
for kids who are not leaving the house, I think it's excessive.
Can I just add, my suggestion is to reach out to the high school. I can't tell you what to do. I just know myself, wasn't that long ago, my son was in high school. And if I have questions, I just reach out to guidance of the teachers. I think that's the best way. And because we've had these conversations before, parents have called, maybe not a school committee meeting, but they've called up and they've asked questions and, we deal with it on an individual situation. But if it's something that's systemic, we can address it too. But I think the best way is to go right to the high school and ask them questions. And hopefully that'll get resolved that way.
Yeah, no, I bring it up because I don't know if other parents, I'm just curious if other people are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very long day on computers. And I know my kids are conscientious and they spend a lot of time, but I just mention it.
Thank you,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, Mr. Murphy, one more?
Yes, it looks like Mr. Martin would like to speak.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
We're good. Good evening, Jason.
I just wanted to thank all of you for recognizing the custodians and the maintenance staff. That really means a lot. Like Craig had said, they've been in the building since March, and they take great pride in making sure they're ready for as the kids are slowly coming back. And you know, the slow transition back has really helped us know what our days are going to look like now. Our days look a lot different today than they did, you know, in early March. So I just want to thank you for recognizing it and giving us the tools that we need. So thank you.
Welcome, Jason. It's a pleasure to recognize them. Thank you for all the good work you do.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that might be it, Mr. Murphy.
That is it.
All right, then I think we can entertain a motion to schedule the next meeting.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to schedule the next meeting for what day, Madam Chair?
Thursday, October 8th.
Okay, Madam Chair, I make a motion to make a motion that the next meeting of the school committee be scheduled for Thursday, October 8th, 2020
At 6 p.m.
at 6 p.m.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson,
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. And is there a motion to adjourn? I have 8:31.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:31 p.m.
I second.
And could we have a roll call, please?
yes. Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you for participating tonight. And we'll see you at our next meeting. Good night.
Sure will, Madam Chair. Thank you, Luke. Thanks for your service.